Hello, I'm Jerry Kirkpatrick of Valley Forge and Welding, and a year ago I went to a car show with a friend of mine, and he purchased for $300 a laser beam that he could fit both in his mill and his lathe for doing alignment work. And I've wanted one of those myself for quite some time, but I didn't want to spend the $300 for one. And right now I have a project with this 383 roller stroker behind me to put the power steering pump and the alternator on it, and I have to make all of the bracketry for that and make sure all of the belts are lined up. So a while back I found this little laser, but the problem with it, it has two lights. One was the white light, just a little flashlight. The other was the laser itself, and this one happened to have a very small beam. So what I need to do is make this end so the laser comes right out of the center. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to use a piece of 1/2-inch round tubing, and by using this I can use my collet in the mill. I'll use just a 3/8 bolt to turn the light on and off, because the body has to be uninterrupted to get away from the little switches. To keep the batteries away from the laser, from the contact, I'm just using a small length of vacuum hose that, as I screw this in, it will compress this and allow the battery to touch this little spring. I need to make this end. I tried making one that would fit into the body, but it was not concentric at all. So by using this piece of 5/8 solid aluminum 6061, I'll make another one of these that will slip fit into the 1/2-inch tubing. So let's get over on the lathe and start turning one of these things out. So this is the piece of 1/2-inch tubing that will be the body of the laser, and this is a 3/8 bolt that I'll be using, and I've already tapped the inside of the tube to accept the bolt, but as you can see, the head of the bolt is much larger than the 1/2-inch body of the laser itself. So I got a piece of 1/2-inch S7 and drilled and tapped one end of it as a mandrel. So I'll use this to turn the head of the bolt down to the 1/2-inch. So the body of the S7 is 510 thousandths, so I need to turn this down that extra 10 thousandths to make it an even 1/2 inch, so it will fit into the collet of the mill. So I'm going to touch off on the piece and then come in that 10 thousandths. Now we'll put the bolt in the mandrel. And tighten it up. And zero the dial on my indicator. So at this point, the lathe is set to exactly 1/2 inch. Since I'm going to be knurling this piece, I'm going to take another 10 thousandths off because the knurling is going to raise the surface slightly. Break the edge on the inside. And the outside. And now to knurl it. Needs a little more on the inside. Perfect. Now I'm going to turn it back to the 1/2 inch diameter just to clean it up. Now the end cap is finished. This is what will turn the laser on and off when it's finished. The next thing we'll do is turn the end for the laser to slide in. So the next thing to make is the small end cap to replace this one. It had the 2 holes in it, one for the flashlight, one for the laser. I have to make one typical of this that will accept the laser right in the center. And to make this piece, I'm just going to use a piece of 5/8 solid aluminum. It's already been faced and a pilot center hole already drilled. I'm going to leave this full diameter. So what I want to do is just knurl the small portion that will be sticking out. Now I want to put Dicom on there. Okay, now that we've got the Dicom on, the portion that will be fitted into the body of the laser is 240 thousandths deep. I'm going to set my calipers. How deep I want the 240 or 370 thousandths, and I want the overall length to be a 1/2 inch. So now I have the distance for both of the lengths of this. So I've touched off on the outside of the knurl and set the dial to 0. Now I'm going to start coming in. Now I'll check the diameter of what I've got so I know how much more to come in. And I'm right at 500 right now, and I have to go to 375, so I'm going to set my dial to 0. Let's see if we got a good fit here. I've got another 5/1000s, but I didn't want to get too far ahead of myself. There we have a nice tight fit. So next I'm going to drill a 1/8 inch hole all the way through for the beam itself to come out. Next we'll drill the hole for the laser beam itself to slide into. So the socket for the body of the laser to fit into only has to be 1/4 of an inch deep. So I measured from the end of the taper on the pointy part of the drill to the end of the tape is 1/4 of an inch. So that's all the deeper I need to go. And now we'll part it off. And there you have it. The end for the beam to shine out. The recess for the laser itself. we'll do a little deburring and shining it up, and next will be to cut the barrel to length. Okay, so just to recap a little bit, this was the original end. This was the original barrel, which slid in there, making the complete laser. Then I made a end cap with a single hole for the laser to fit in the back. Tried that in here. When I put it in the lathe, it was just crooked as hell because the body of the laser was so thin and all tweaked out of shape. And then I made this. This is the one that you saw me make on the lathe just a moment ago. It fit well, but I wasn't happy with the feel. When I pushed that in there, it felt like the aluminum on aluminum was going to gall if it was twisted or had any resistance whatsoever. So I went ahead and made another one following exactly the same steps as you saw on the aluminum one, but this one feels much nicer when it's pressed in. It's a much nicer press fit, and it's not going to gall the aluminum as it goes in. So the next thing I have to do is figure out how long to cut this barrel. The laser itself will be pushed in here, very nice press fit until it bottoms out. This little piece of rubber, this is just some vacuum hose that will go over this spring and press the batteries away from that contact. When these batteries and the end of this bolt come in contact with that spring, the laser will turn on. So I've got to get a dimension from the shoulder here to the end of this, and then the stack of 3 batteries. And I got some shrink material just for electrical, and these batteries don't fit, so I just used the forceps here. So I'm going to stretch this open pretty good, put a drill in there, drop the batteries in one at a time. Make sure that they're squared up in there. Now I'll cut this off on both ends with an X-Acto knife, razor blade. So I'll get the dimension when this is cut loose. Get a dimension from there to there, and I know that the plug goes into the end to turn the light on. So I'll turn it to seated, and then I'll come back out maybe a half a turn, and I'll take a depth gauge and measure to the end of the bolt to the end of this shoulder, and that will determine how much or at what point all of this stack will be in there. So it looks like somewhere right around here. So I'll get this all figured out, and I'll meet you over on the lathe. So after a short period of mathing, I determined that the overall body size should be 2 inches and 300 thousandths. Okay, it's cut to length. Let's put it all back together. So here are all the parts together. I cleaned the dichum off of there. One thing I didn't mention was that I had to solder a small jumper wire across this switch. And that's the one that turns on the laser. So let's get this assembled. First I'm going to insert, now this is a very nice press fit in there. Now there it's bottomed. Very good. Next goes the barrel, and I think I'm going to put this little rubber bumper on. Be easier to put it on now. I'm going to have to go press this on. I'll be right back. Now I've got that pressed on. I'm going to drop in the 3 little batteries and screw the back end in. And lo and behold, we have a laser, a very fine laser. And when I unscrew this, that little rubber thing, the vacuum hose will press the batteries away from that spring. That's great. I guess the next thing to do is chuck it up in the lathe and see how true it is. Okay, so I've got it mounted in the lathe now, and you can see that it's pointing right smack in the middle of the chuck, and here we have it turned on. Staying true as ever. So I would call this a success, and now I have a laser that I can use in the mill, the lathe, and what I'm going to use it for first is lining up pulleys on the motor, on the Jeepster. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you later.